Welcome to viewers. Today we will discuss the topic called as resources, which is part of economic geography. And in this chapter we will discuss about the introduction of resources and their importance, and the main thing is the definition of resources and also the resource classification based on different aspects, and steps taken in resource conservation is also we cover, and then the resource conservation methods and conservation initiatives. So, if you look at the first one, geography, you know that geography has developed into two main branches. One is physical geography and another one is human geography. So, as a branch of human geography, economic geography was developed in later half of the 19th century. It mainly studies and analyzes the resources and also the human activities, and not only that, their interaction in the various regions. This studies all consists of in the economic geography, especially about the resources. Now, if you look at after the World War II, special importance was given to these resources. Why? Because lot of resources at the time as exploited, and because of that they have given a lot of importance to the human resources especially, and optimum use of natural resources. And not only that, the resource appraisal, that is resource assessment, is also done, and their utilization because of their importance for economic progress of the country. Because in the world, all the countries, the first and foremost requirement is that the availability of resources. So, the availability of resources, because of availability of resources, most of the resources are exploited, and then this is the what is called as the importance of economic progress of the country depends upon the resources. Now, another aspect is that after the World War II, there is a increasing mechanization and technologically development after the this one reflected in the development of means of transport, especially communications, and production of resources, utilization of resources, and conservation of resources. And this all led to the development in the field of resource geography. Now, it has become a new field for the study. So, now this we have seen that the importance of resource and how it has evolved, and now we will discuss what is a resource. Now, the definitions given by different economic geographers about the resources, and that also we will discuss here. Now, in geography, a resource has been defined as those things which are endowed by nature. What is that endowed by nature? Which is given by nature, which is produced by nature, which of great value to man. That only it becomes a resource. It is any physical material that constitutes part of the earth, we are calling as a resources. And the another way we can also define the resource are spatially distributed, varying in quantity and also in the quality. Like for example, some resources are finite, and while others can be replenished at varying rates. So, take an example. For example, now the finite example is that the mineral resources. So, these mineral resources are to some extent only you can extract these resources, but some are replenished at varying rates. For example, water is a resource, forest is a resource, and the other all renewable resources comes under this replenished resources. So, finally, what we can define, how resources can be defined, it is a naturally occurring exploitable material that society perceives to be useful to its economic and material well-being. This definition was given by Gettys in 2011. So, it is now from this definition what we can know that the resources are naturally occurring which are exploitable. So, if you not extract, so there is no economic or material benefit comes from that resources. So, it should be exploitable material and it should be useful for its economic and material being, and this is the definition given by Gettys. Yes. Now everything available in our environment which can be used satisfy our needs, provided here you can see here technologically accessible, it should be technologically accessible and economically feasible and culturally acceptable. These are the main things in order to, so we have to concern in our environment and can be termed as, these are all come as a resource. Okay. Now, if you look at the every material has some utility for human being, but its utilization is possible on the availability of appropriate technology. If you use appropriate technology only, the material will be utilized and the human beings will what is called the utilize and is possible way for the using of this material. So, now for example, I will give one example. For centuries ago, there are coal, petroleum were present below the earth surface, but the technology for their utilization has been developed recently, and for extraction, mining, all these things we have done for the coal and petroleum. Now, these materials which are in the earth, that is after using only or utilizing only, these materials turned into resources. So, this we are calling as the resources. So, now next is that it is therefore we can call resources human ability and need which create resource value. So, what is needed here? Human ability is needed and that will create a resource value. Now, from a woman's perspective, natural resources is anything obtained from environment to satisfy human needs and wants. So, this definition given by Miller and Spoolman. So, here what is all in all definitions, it is a common thing is that the from woman's perspective, the resources are natural and anything obtained from environment to satisfy the human needs and wants. So, this is what the resources are. So, various definitions also we have discussed. Now, coming to here, if you look at the resources, three main characteristics we can see. One is utility and second one is limited availability and third one is potential for consumption or depletion. Yes. Now, so here we have seen the three main characteristics: utility, how these resources should be utilized, and limited availability. So, these resources are not always it is available, but there is a limited availability. And the another thing is we have to use these resources for consumption and for depletion. Okay? Right. Now, coming to benefits of resource utilization may include, now if you use the resources, what benefits we are getting? So, we can increase our wealth, meeting needs our wants and proper functioning of a system or a enhanced well-being, this will benefit. Okay? From the resource, these are the benefits we are getting, and resource endowment can be very important in the process of development, that is very important. And now, another thing is that the resources provide a base for industrial growth. What is needed for any industrial growth? resources are needed. So, resources are the raw materials for the industries. So, this will help the country to end their export. So, now if you look at the throughout the world, now some countries have developed because of availability of resources. Some in some countries, even we have the resources, they are not using the technology to extract these resources. So, they are not developing. So, some countries have, they are importing the raw materials or resources, and they are providing a industrial growth by using these resources. So, we can see the various situations in the world, some completely, so some countries having the availability of resources, some countries are availability of different types of resources. So, this we can see here, and world resources are very, we can say that world resources are very unevenly distributed, accounting for difference in economical development. So, I can say that if the resources are unevenly distributed, definitely there is a uneven economic development we can see in the what is called in different countries. Now, the another, so here you can see, look at this slide, here the classification of resources. Here we can classify based on the different categories, or based on some type of origin, based on renewability, based on the distribution, and based on the rate of use. So, I can categorize these resources into 4 categories based on the origin, based on the renewability, based on the distribution, basis on the rate of use. First, the first one, that is basis of origin. So, I can classify the resources into biotic and abiotic. So, all of you know about what is a biotic and abiotic, and basis on renewability, we can, the resources are renewable and non-renewable resources, and basis on distribution, one is the ubiquitous resources and localized resources. What is ubiquitous resources? Which are available everywhere, that is called as ubiquitous resources, and the localized resources means which are locally present. So, this is another category, and the another category we will discuss about that rate of use. This is very important. Sustainable resources, unsustainable resources. So, we will discuss each and every class in detail. Okay? Now, let us look about the classification of resource already based on the origin. Now, already we discussed that resources are categorized into biotic and non-biotic. The name itself, it shows about what is a biotic. Biotic is nothing but a living resource, such as human resource, animal resource, like. Okay? These are all plants, all this comes under in the biotic resource. And the next one is about abiotic resources. The name you can also say about the abiotic resources are non-living resources. So, now land is the one, the air we breathe is also comes under abiotic, and water is also abiotic. So, these are all comes under in the abiotic, and you can observe here abiotic resources, land is very crucial, important, air is very crucial, and water is also very crucial. So, now these resources based on the origin. Now, let us look another classification, that is about the resources based on renewability or exhaustibility. Like, for example, we can divide the resources into 2 types. One is renewable resource, another one is non-renewable resources. So, now the name itself is also showing renewable, which can be reproduced, which can be available throughout in nature, that are called as renewable resources. So, what I can define, how we can define the renewable resources? Resources which can be renewed or reproduced and are almost permanent in nature. These comes under the renewable resources. Now, take an example, solar energy. We are getting the solar energy every day, we are getting, that comes under the renewable energy, and wind, air, all this comes under what is called as renewable resources. So, now materials which can be used and then replenished either natural or with human assistance with a relatively short space of time. For example, now we will can with this, if it is in a short span of time which can be replenished, that also comes under the renewable resources. For example, food crops, we will grow the crops and then within 6 months or we will harvest, again we will cultivate and again we will get the crops. These are all called what is called natural. Water also the it comes under renewable resources, because the lot of water facility, the season wise also will get, if there is a more rains you will get the water. So, this can be reproduced or renewable. And forest also, now a lot of huge, so forest, dense forest is there. So, for to some extent we will harvest that forest, again this forest in a short period of time again it will grow. So, this all comes under in the renewable resources. Animals, fish all comes under in the renewable resources. And coming to non-renewable resources. Now, you are clear about the renewable resources. What are non-renewable? Which are not produced again, which are not renewable again, and these resources are finite amount and cannot be replaced by natural process or replaced at a slower than the rate of use. For example, if you take an example, coal. Now, coal is available and we are extracting that coal, but exploitation of a complete use of coal after 40 years, what happened? The coal reserves will be over exploited, and after 40 years you cannot see the life, you cannot extract the coal. So, now why we are coal comes under non-renewable resource? Because it cannot replace at a rate slower than the rate of use. So, these are very important example in non-renewable resources. Now, so already I said that example coal, natural gas is the non-renewable, and also oil, diamonds or mineral resources all comes under in the non-renewable resources. And so, these resources are formed geologically in a very long period of time. Suppose in order to form coal, it takes millions of years. So, that is why we are saying that it can be replaced at a slower than the rate of use, but after millions of years. So, that is why it comes under non-renewable resource. And difficult to renew or reproduce is called as non-renewable or exhaustible resources. Okay. This is the another classification based on the renewability or exhaustibility. The another one is about the basis on distribution of resources. We can say that ubiquitous resources and localized resources. Now, I said ubiquitous resources are abundantly found everywhere in the world, that we are calling as ubiquitous resources. Example, air is everywhere we can found. So, that are called as the ubiquitous resources. And localized resources. So, localized resource means resources which are not found everywhere. For example, now coal reserves, petrol reserves or another gold mines, all that are particularly confined to some localized areas. So, that comes under in the localized resources. So, based on distribution we can categorize into ubiquitous resources and localized resources. And another category or classification based on the rate of use of resources are classified as sustainable resources and non-sustainable resources. Now, sustainable resources are the resources which can be what is called as used further generation, like the rate of use of a resource is such the amount taken will affect the resource, and it is an ability to renew itself, and the same rate of productivity we can see in the sustainable resources and maintained into future, like future generation also can use these resources. This comes under in the sustainable resources. For example, quotas of fish trees harvested in a season. So, these are comes under in the sustainable resource, means you have to use in optimum utilization of these resources may lead to sustainable resources. So, now in developed countries or in a very good economic nation, what they will follow? They follow the sustainable method, means whatever the resources available they will use optimum or rational use of resources will be used, and because of that the future generation can also enjoy the resource. That resources are called as sustainable resources. And non-sustainable resources, so the based on rate of use of resources outstrips, these are all comes under in the non-sustainable resources. Then the another classification here, we have seen different method, but generally also the resources can be classified to some extent. We can say that water is a resource, forest is a resource, mineral is a resource, energy is a resource, marine resources. So, these are all also we can categorize in a such a way. So, here we are broadly discussed about the different types of resources. One is water resource, forest resource, mineral resources, energy resources, marine resources. In this class or in this lecture, we will only discuss about the water, forest resources only and its conservation. Now, let us look about the water resource. Everybody knows water is one of our most vital resource, and it is a major factor for the world climate and weather pattern. You can observe here, it influences the climate and weather pattern, and it also does all life on the earth depend upon the water. So, this is a very important resource. So, we will study these water resources. So, I can categorize these water resources into two. One is the surface water and another one is groundwater. Okay. So, see here surface water and groundwater. Each of these categories is a part of Earth's water circulatory system called as hydrological cycle. So, now you know about hydrological cycle. So, water present on the surface which evaporates and which will condense in the atmosphere, again this water comes in the form of precipitation either through rainfall or a snowfall. So, this hydrological cycle, so water is the responsible. So, for economic or ecological imbalance, what is needed here? For water is needed. So, hydrological cycle is very important, ultimately derived from precipitation. So, the water resources are very important. And how the water is also used by human use water for three major purposes. So, in irrigation, to grow the crops we will use the water, and for industrial use we use the water, and for domestic and commercial use also we use the water. So, if you tell about the importance of water, well, there is a lot of importance have there for water resources. So, coming to here, another thing is that, so it is a resource. What you have to do here, if you exploit this water or improper use of this water facilities, what will happen? So, this water will be exhausted. So, now what you have to do here, conservation of water resources are needed. So, we cannot increase the supply of water, but we can manage through conservation. That is the only possible method where we can conserve the water by managing the water resources. Now, there are three basic methods of water management. One is input approach. In this input approach, what we will do? We will increase the supply of usable water. This is we are calling as input approach. And the output approach. In output approach, what we will do? We will decrease the loss by evaporation, and to remove the pollutants from the existing supplies, and to conserve water by reducing the waste and the or average per capita use. So, here in the output approach, you will what you will do? You are decreasing the loss by evaporation. What happens here? You are decreasing, so that you are conserving the water. And second thing is, you are removing all the pollutants of water from the water, and then you are using. So, this is also what is one of the method. This is output approach method. And now the another thing is through water governance. It is a tool for water management. So, now three basic methods of water management are: one is input approach, one is output approach, and through water governance we can conserve the water resources. So, water is very important, and the conservation of water is also very important. Okay. Then in the same way, already we have discussed that in this we will discuss only the water resources and the forest resources. So, all of you know about the importance of forest. So, this forest also influence on the life on the earth. It not only provides safe haven for a richly diverse biota, but also favorable modified climatic parameter. So, water is one of the factor for the climate and weather pattern, and forests are also one of the important favorable modified climatic parameter. So, the importance of forest is the multi-dimensional. I can say that it is a multi-dimensional. Now, the significance of forest can be considered under economic and ecological and cultural significance. And if you look at the ecological significance of forests stabilize global climate. This is the one. So, if you say, because of if there is no forest, we can see that in recent news, many type of calamities disasters is taking place. Why? Because the forests are necessary for global climate, stabilize the global climate, and they protect biodiversity. That is the one. And another thing is, forests support natural ecological system and process. They are also recreational and tourist value for great spiritual significance. And next comes here conservation of forest resources. So, we have to, the main aim of this forest conservation is rational use and cautious use is the very important one, and which can be resources can be remain for available for future generation. Forest conservation is intimately linked with the conservation of biodiversity and wildlife. This is also one, and the another one is integrated approach needs to be developed for the forest conservation. And here for forest conservation we can see into like in situ one and ex situ conservation. What is in situ conservation? Means endangered species are naturally they will give the natural environment. And for example, if you take the sanctuaries, wildlife sanctuaries, so and the another one is biodiversity parks, all these things we are calling as the in situ. And ex situ means that now the endangered species or the species which will be in the, they will provide in, for example, zoos. In zoo the animals will be given, but they are not given a natural environment. So, that we are calling as ex situ conservation. So, these are the two methods which will be used to conserve the forest resources. Now, next comes under resource conservation. We will talk about total resource conservation. Now, in the resource conservation methods, afforestation is one method, watershed management is one method, and recycling is one method, and protecting already existing resources on one method, and spreading awareness among the people, this is a very important about the consequences of resources. And there are conservation initiatives are there. One is Ramsar wetland conservation, treatise on wildlife and resource protection, and blue whale protection, and endangered species, that is red data book is also there, and protection of birds. These are all conservative initiatives. And now we all in this chapter we have discussed about the resources, definition of resources, and classification of resources, and also the conservation of resources, and the steps which we have to take to conserve the resources. Thank you very much.